Hello in YouTube, this is Nharviala. For those of you who have followed me, I've done Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profiles in the past. This time I'm going with Card Fight. I kind of play Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly got out of it. I've got one Lightsworn deck, probably just going to get a Felice and leave it at that, playing tournaments or whatever. But anyway, my main games now are Card Fight and Magic. So I'll be posting up a deck list for the other two decks I have done. So here we are. So this is obviously a Genesis deck. Evidently the first English one I've seen on here, on YouTube. So, hey, cool. What's the first? So the starting Vanguard is Vivid Rabbit. Her skill says, I can counterblast 1, put her into the Soul, and check top 5 for grade 3. Every deck has this unit, or equivalent of it. It's just a staple for this build. And the obvious Forerunner, which a lot of them have, except for Woodline Dragon, but that's something else. So this is Vivid Rabbit. And this is the main card. Minerva. She is a dual-standing Vanguard. I think one of the first for English, actually, so that's really neat. She's kind of got a heftier cost than most of the others, but with Genesis Soul charging, it's not much, really. She can stand herself, give herself a power boost, which not many Vanguards do. Then if I have Regalia of Wisdom, Angelica, and the Soul, she gets plus 2,000 power. So, 13 beater. So, 4 of her because she is just way too good and I want the increased chance of getting her. Next we have, for Regalia of Wisdom, Angelica. She's a break ride for the Genesis clan. I can Soul Blast 3 when a Genesis rides her. I get to draw 2 and the Vanguard gets plus 10,000 power. So the first swing on her own with the break ride is 23 without any boosts. The next one is going to be 28, and that's assuming you don't Soul Blast something like Witch of Frogs or have a booster hidden for that second attack. So she also lets you fuel Minerva's cost, who also requires discarding 3 cards. Not as good, but she does give a power boost too. So those are all of the grade 3s. Next we have Battle Maiden Sahuhime. She's pretty much a staple in Genesis. So, kind of obvious. Her ability, when her attack hits a Vanguard, if she's in the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, I can counterblast 1 and Soul Charge 3. Better than the grade 1 booster. We've got 4 Witch of Ravens. Her ability, if she's Soul Blasted, I can counterblast 1 to call her to a Rearguard. If I swung with the Rearguard, then use Minerva's Soul Blast, I can get multiple attacks in a turn, or I can use Angelica's Soul Blast when she's break rided and provide Rearguards without having to use up my hand. So, she's a good advantage getter. Alright, next we have 4 Witch of Grapes. Her ability says when she's Soul Blasted, I can Soul Charge 2 if I have a Genesis Vanguard. So, the grade 2s in here are really only used because they're providing fuel from Minerva. Next we have 3 Goddess of the Shield Aegis. These are quintet walls. Again, I believe one of the first ones released for English. Their ability is when they're called to the guard circle from the hand, I can counterblast 1, and the top 5 cards of the deck go to guard. So, it's a Sentinel, so you can only have 4 of these and perfect guards. So, These are great because they give you a lot of shield without you burning up your hand. But the reason I don't run 4 in here is because this deck does go through cards like crazy. Next we have 4 Witch of Frogs Melissa. Her ability is the same as the Witch of Ravens. When she's Soul Blasted, I can Counterblast 1. I can call her from the drop zone to a rear circle. This is great because I can swing with Minerva alone, don't need anything to help boost her. Then I can Soul Blast a Witch of Frogs, call her behind Minerva, and Minerva's next attack is 35 instead of 28, if you Break Rider. Next we have 4 Apple Witch Cider. She is the main Soul Charger of this deck. Her ability is when she's called to the rear guard from the hand, the Vanguard with Regalia in its name, which is Minerva and Angelica, they get the ability when a Genesis unit is moved from the guard circle to the drop zone, I get to move them to the soul instead. So she's my main guarder. She lets me soul charge as well as defend. So she's a good card. Next we have 2 Witch of Oranges. Her ability says when she's put into the drop zone from the soul, I get a soul charge too. So she's a good way to continue the rides. So that's it for grade 2s and 1s. We've got 4 Cyber Tiger, 4 crits. We've got 4 Lemon Witches, another 4 crits. And then we've got the Battle Maiden, who can move into the soul and give Minerva a boost. So that's 12 crits and the obvious 4 heals. Now, different thing about this deck than my other attempt at Genesis, which focused on Goddess of Good Luck, Fortuna, is this deck does nowhere near as much soul charging. I do just enough using the Quintet Wall combo with Apple Witch to soul charge 7. The Witch of Grapes and Witch of Oranges can both do some more soul charging, but that's pretty much it for actual soul charging. Because then again, I use at most 6 Soul Blast a turn once, then the other turns are just going to be Soul Blast 3. So, after the ride to get up to 3, that's 3 cards in the soul. If you use the starting Vanguard Vivid Rabbit's ability. So, Witch of Grapes and Witch of Oranges can continue that. Apple Witch can keep more up, but really, for Genesis, this deck has a very small soul. Which is great because it still does go through the deck a bit when you're twin driving twice a turn, plus any damage you may take, plus your starting draw, plus the soul charges. I've had to cut back on it, so I've been testing this build online. It seems to work out. So, by the way, I've tried Goddess of the Trees Jupiter. For losing an ability, just to have a 12k attacker, I could just call a grade 3 for 1,000 less for the same ability. Jupiter is just not worth running in my book. The only change I'm really considering that I've seen effective was 2 Quintet Walls and 2 Perfect Walls. So, just some ideas. Please comment, let me know what your thoughts are. And again, first English Minerva deck on YouTube, so hooray for that. This is Nharviala, signing off.